Welcome to the Workbench. I'm Doug. I'm happy to have today a special guest, Linda Puccini, to help me discuss with you the difference in bobbins.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there a difference in bobbins?
Well, of course there is. And thanks for asking me to be a part of this presentation, because I think that when it comes to baby lock machines, when you're going to talk about bobbins, we have to talk about all of our product, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It doesn't stop with just one machine.
No,
And
it doesn't.
See that on Facebook even.
Right, and we field a lot of questions from people on our dedicated Facebook channels, and what happens is people ask some questions about bobbins, and so there's easy answers, but I think that as we start going through our product, we're going to draw relevance between what machines use what bobbin, and hopefully it'll make it a whole lot easier for you. So Doug, why don't you start with the big guys?
Okay, the big guys, the long arm machines, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the long arm machines, because we're doing a lot of stitching on them either by hand, okay, or with the use of the Pro Stitcher.
And when you mean by hand, we're not talking about by hand. We're talking about you're driving the machine or you're using automation.
Right. So often with those machines, they're using a heavier thread too. So with them, it accommodates the Class M bobbin, which is the largest bobbin in the baby lock group.
Yeah, so let's take a look at those. Those are these bobbins right here. And so an M-class bobbin holds a lot of thread, which you want, because if you're going to be doing free motion quilting, you want to have a lot of thread. Now, right next to it, we've got an M-class that's pre-wound.
It is. The long arms, they come with a separate bobbin winder. So to wind them, you have to set that up, and then that's typically where you're going to use your metal bobbins or your aluminum bobbins.
Right.
But somebody likes the ease of just pulling them out of the box and locking and loading them. And that's where the benefit comes in with the pre-wound bobbins.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like to tell people is that it's really about what it is that you're doing and what kind of a contrast you want. Maybe pre-wound bobbins are a perfect choice for you because it matches perfectly with the quilt backing that you're using. But if you want to be able to match your thread on top, you can wind your own. And conversely, so if you want to use two different weights of thread, because those machines, they balance their bobbins separate and first before you get a perfect stitch. So this gives you ultimate freedom, gives you the ultimate amount of thread, and it's a perfect choice for somebody who's a long armor.
Absolutely, Linda. You're right. You're so right.
Yeah, I'm not always right, but at least I'm right on this.
Yes,
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next machine bobbins that we have in front of us, let's go to the center. These are our Class 15 bobbins.
Correct. And these are typically found in the Jazz. They're found in all of our drop-in sewing and embroidery type machines.
Yep.
Majority of the baby lock sewing and embroidery type machines.
Yeah. And that's really good to know, because today's machines for baby lock, most of them come with the Class 15 bobbin. Now, if you've got a baby lock machine and they last for a long time, you might find that your bobbins look a little bit differently. We're going to get to those in a second because those are type L bobbins. But just because it's a baby lock, you can't assume that it all uses the same bobbin. So these Class 15 bobbins right here are the ones that come packaged with our machine. And Doug, talk a little bit about why they're a different color.
Well, on all of our sewing and embroidery machines, we have a low bobbin indicator. And that low bobbin indicator sends an invisible ray, so to speak, through the center of the hub of the bobbin. As long as there's thread wrapped around the center, it can't pass through, right? But as soon as the thread starts to come off the center of that bobbin and it can see through to the other side, into that sensor, then that's what activates it.
Right.
And when it's activated, you get about 8-10 inches of thread remaining.
Yeah, it's a really good indicator. Now, the other thing to notice too is that if you buy just Class 15 bobbins, and it's a common bobbin, what you may not be getting is a good quality bobbin. And so as a brand, we highly recommend our Baby Lock branded bobbins. Not only will they have the blue cast, but what you'll notice too is that they're really nice and smooth and a little beveled on the edge.
Yeah, so if you look at them from a side view, you'll see that from the center to the outside, they're somewhat concave. Because sometimes when you're sewing, maybe your bobbin case would flutter a little bit. And that prevents that upper thread from catching it and jamming up your machine.
Yeah.
In contrast to some of the pre-wound bobbins.
Yes.
Or generic Class 15 bobbins, which have a flat facing on it. And sometimes your pre-wounds, you may find that they're wound very tight to get as much thread as possible.
Well, and the other thing too, Doug, I notice is that when they wind these, like if you've ever had a bobbin in your hand and shake it up, you're gonna have thread everywhere, not on a pre-wound bobbin. And the reason is because they put a little bit of a finish, and because the factory is able to take that thread and have it push underneath some of the other threads. So if it hangs by a thread like this, Don't use it in your machine. What you need to do is first coil off enough thread that when you hold it in your hand, it's just going to lift off. Then you know that you can set it in the machine. But these pre-wounds, these pre-wounds are for embroidery. So if you're running a baby lock embroidery machine, they only come in black or white, but that's really all you need, because the purpose of these is that thread stays downstairs.
Absolutely. And a lot of times these threads are thinner than the finishing touch thread. So sometimes if you put this particular pre-wound in there, you may experience the bobbin thread coming up to the top of the fabric.
Yeah, but that's why we provide a separate bobbin case for embroidery, so that you get that additional, as you call it, gram pull on the thread. It's gonna tug a little bit more at it. It's gonna make those top threads come downstairs, and you're gonna have perfect embroidery.
Yeah, you're talking about the one with the purple dot.
Yes, the one with the purple dot. The big confusion of the purple dot and why you have it. Okay, Doug, we've made some good progress. Let's talk about these last bobbins right here.
Okay, the Class L bobbins. These were used to be with our top of the line machines prior to 2001. And
some of my baby lock machines started off with a Type L bobbin, and what would happen is somebody would try to put a Class 15 bobbin in one of those older machines, and you could have a mess. And even worse, you try using one of these Type L bobbins in a baby lock machine today, it's not going to lift it high enough, and you're not going to form a stitch. So it's important to have the right bobbin.
Exactly. You know, the Class 15 is going to hold much more and give you more embroidery time in between.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about, we've got metal. So what kind of a machine would the metal one be for?
Well, those are for more of the commercial machines, such as the Accomplish, the Alliance, single needle embroidery, because that machine has a bobbin winder built in with it. That machine also can be used for free motion sewing.
Yeah.
Outside of the embroidery factor. So when you're sewing with free motion, again, like you said, you may want to have different appearances on your fabric on top and bottom, and that gives you the luxury of writing your own in that particular color.
Right, very good. So the metal bobbin is going to be for our Baby Lock Alliance single needle embroidery only machine that you can sometimes quilt with, but it's also for like the Baby Lock Accomplished, but that's just one of them. Now these other bobbins we have here, they're all a little bit different. This one with the blue on the inside, or that blue-green, Doug, that's got a little bit of a different back. What's that one for?
Okay, so these are the Magna Glide that come with all of our other embroidery models. Okay, the Ventures and
10 needle,
the Intrepid,
6 needle,
we
right?
can go on and on, right? With the history of them. And the purpose of the magnet is to hold the bobbin still, and then also add a little bit of extra tension to help pull that upper thread down better for that embroidery. Because, you know, the multi-needle machines are strictly for embroidery. So they're not as picky as what type of bobbin, other than making sure it's a Type L bobbin.
Right. Now, this Coates & Clark bobbin is also a Type L, and it's got cardboard. And in fact, I bought a gross of these when I got my Baby Lock Enterprise, and I'm still working off of them. But when I run out of these, chances are I'm going to have to move to the Magna Glide, because they've stopped manufacturing these, correct?
I believe they are some manufactured by some companies, but however,
we're
recommending with that cardboard
these.
bobbin, that magnet really stabilizes that pull off of the thread and makes it more consistent than what the cardboard bobbins were.
Yeah, and then we've got plastic ones. So what's the difference between cardboard and plastic, and can you interchange them?
It's just a preference. All Type L bobbins will work with any of our Type L machines. Okay. It's just that each one may have to be adjusted a little bit differently. So, you know, we have videos from the Workbench, you know, that discuss that and discuss the different bobbin cases and such. So you may want to check that out.
All right, and then lastly, we do have one just for you to know that if you've got a Baby Lock machine that you've been using for a long time, you can still use a Type L bobbin on it. Now, we had a hard time finding one in our office, and what you're going to notice is that this is a smooth one, and this was actually a pre-wound bobbin. We just have it here as a placeholder, but just know that when you go to wind your own bobbins, every single bobbin that you choose when you wind it by yourself needs to have that little notch, and what that does is it helps it cling to your bobbin winder so that you get a good fill. Don't ever be tempted to take a pre-wound bobbin that doesn't have that little notch. Even our big M-class bobbins have a little notch on them like this, right? If you're gonna wind a bobbin of your own, you definitely need to have a place where it will cling to that bobbin winder so that it isn't counter spinning while you're trying to wind it, or you're gonna find you're gonna spend a lot of time winding something that just doesn't wind.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why on your shaft of the bobbin winders, they have a little bitty spring.
Yep.
And that spring is what grabs that notch to make sure that it winds appropriately. Sometimes if you don't do that, it could be wobbly.
Yep. All right.
In the wind.
That's a lot of great information to share. I'm glad that you asked me to join you because bobbins are a really important part of the recipe for success. Like we always say in training and education for Baby Lock, I hope that you guys enjoy sewing, have a lot of fun. Check out Baby Lock retailers too if you need any additional help.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Linda, thank you very much for assisting with this. You're always a pleasure to have around working with. So
Thanks, Doug.
now that you know, let's get out and sew.
Yeah, or embroider or longarm, whatever it is that you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.